Go find your happiness. And saying, please figure it out with us here.
The night that would eventually be remembered as Robyn Brown's darkest night did not begin with screams, panic, or flashing lights. Instead, it started with something far more dangerous: silence. A silence that wrapped itself around the Brown household like a cold fog, slowly creeping into every room, every breath, every thought. And in that suffocating quiet, something inside Robyn began to unravel. For weeks, there had been signs, subtle ones at first, then louder, then impossible to ignore. But the tragedy of families falling apart is that sometimes everyone is too consumed by their own emotional storms to see. When another family member is drowning, and Robyn, despite being the one accused of breaking the family, was now the most broken of them all. It began with her withdrawing, first from conversations, then from meals, then from entire days. She would lock herself in her room, claiming headaches, rest, or just a moment. But those moments turned into hours, those hours into nights, and the nights into long stretches where nobody saw her at all. Her children tried to understand. Aurora whispered to Brina, "Mom hasn't smiled in days." Her youngest asked, "Is Mom mad at me?" And each time the older siblings replied with the same half-hearted words, "No, she's just tired." But they knew it wasn't just exhaustion. It was something deeper, something darker, something they didn't have the language to describe. Even the camera crew noticed. In interviews, Robyn's eyes often darted around, avoiding contact. Her sentences trailed off. She would start talking about family unity, but end up staring into space. Hands trembling subtly, lips pressed into a thin, controlled line. Producers exchanged worried glances, but they kept filming. After all, reality TV thrives on cracks. But this time, the cracks were turning into fractures. Inside her bedroom, Robyn had stopped opening the blinds. The room remained dim almost all day. Clothes piled in corners, unopened mail cluttered her nightstand. Half-drunk glasses of water sat untouched for days. She didn't notice. She didn't care. She couldn't. Her guilt, her fears, and the pressure from the outside world had created a storm she couldn't escape. Fans blamed her for everything: Christine leaving, Janelle detaching, Mary walking away, Kody collapsing emotionally. And while she stayed silent publicly, privately, those accusations ate her alive. She began replaying old episodes, watching how the narrative formed around her. She paused, scenes, rewound moments, stared at her own face, searching for the villain. The world insisted she was. Every hateful comment, every meme, every message calling her the downfall of the Brown family echoed inside her head. But the breaking point came in the most unexpected way. A small detail that shouldn't have mattered, but hit her harder than anything else. One evening, while sorting through old boxes with the intention of decluttering, she found a family photo from 2012. The year the Browns had moved to Vegas. The year hopes were high. The year every wife still believed they were building something beautiful together. The photo showed all 5 adults smiling, Kody in the middle, arms wrapped around everyone. And Robyn slightly leaning into the family she thought she was joining forever. She stared at that picture for a long time. Too long because something inside her cracked. The woman in the picture was hopeful, naive, believing in unity. The woman sitting on the floor now was exhausted, alone, blamed, broken. Robyn's eyes filled as she whispered, "What happened to us?" The tears didn't stop. They came harder, heavier, until her breathing grew uneven. She hugged the picture to her chest like it was the last lifeline she had. But instead of comfort, it made her feel like she had failed everyone, including the version of herself in that photo. She didn't leave her room after that. Dinner passed. Nights settled in. One by one, the kids fell asleep. And yet, from behind her closed door, faint sounds emerged. Soft sobs, sharp breaths, long silences, then sobs again. But no one heard them. Not yet. Hours later, Kody walked past her door on his way downstairs. He paused. Something felt wrong. The house had an energy he couldn't describe, like a pressure in the air. A heaviness. A warning. He knocked once. No answer. Knocked again, a little louder. Still nothing. He pressed his ear to the door. Silence. Too much silence. "Kody?" Aurora whispered from the hallway, her voice small. "Your mom hasn't come out," he replied quietly. "Did she say anything to you?" Aurora shook her head slowly, her eyes filling with worry. "She didn't even say goodnight." A cold wave passed through Kody's chest. He knocked harder, calling her name. Still nothing. Another daughter appeared. Then another. Within minutes, all the kids were awake, gathered around the door. "Mom, please." "Open the door." Their voices trembled. The crew, noticing the commotion, approached from downstairs. Everyone stepped back, Kody said shakily. He wasn't the authoritative father he used to be. Tonight, he was terrified, afraid of what he might find, afraid of a truth he had ignored for too long. Inside the room, Robyn sat on the floor with her arms wrapped tightly around her knees, rocking slightly, tears streaming down her face. Hours had passed, but to her, it felt like minutes. Or maybe she didn't feel time at all. She didn't feel anything except numbness and pain crashing together in waves she couldn't control. She whispered the same sentence over and over. "I ruined everything. I ruined everything." Outside, the knocking grew louder. Inside, her world grew darker. And at that moment, the moment before the door would finally open and the family would see her, like they had never seen her before, the Brown household, for the first time ever, held its breath. Because they all knew deep down that whatever was happening behind that door was not something Robyn would ever fully come back from. The moment the lock finally clicked, time almost slowed down. For a second, nobody moved. The kids held their breath, the crew froze on the stairs, and Kody's hand stayed on the doorknob, like even he was afraid of what waited on the other side. The door, which had always just been a normal door in a normal hallway, suddenly felt like a barrier between two completely different worlds. The life they thought they had and the reality they were about to face. Kody pushed the door open slowly. The room was dim. The only light came from a small lamp on the nightstand and the faint blue glow of the TV screen, paused on an old Sister Wives episode. The walls felt closer than usual, like the room itself was shrinking inward. Clothes were scattered, the bed untouched, the blinds still pulled shut as if the outside world no longer existed. And there on the floor next to the bed sat Robyn. Her knees were pulled tightly to her chest, her arms wrapped around them in a desperate grip, as if letting go would cause her whole body to collapse. Her hair, usually styled and camera-ready, fell messily around her face, strands sticking to her damp cheeks. Her eyes were red and swollen, mascara smudged in dark streaks under them. Her breathing was shallow, sharp, as though every inhale hurt. For a second, the kids didn't recognize her. "Mom?" one of the girls whispered. Robyn's eyes flickered toward the doorway, but it was clear that she wasn't really seeing them. It was like they were silhouettes in front of her, distant shapes on the other side of thick glass. She blinked slowly, like it took effort just to focus. Kody stepped in first, but his usual confident entrances were gone. There was no grand presence, no controlling tone. He moved carefully, cautiously, like he was approaching a wounded animal who might bolt or break further at the slightest wrong move. "Robyn?" His voice cracked, something the children were not used to hearing. "What's going on?" She let out a shaky breath, half sob, half laugh, a sound so broken it made the youngest child flinch. "What's going on?" She repeated, her voice hoarse, raw. "Everything's gone, Kody. That's what's going on." The kids looked at each other, confusion and fear mixing in their eyes. One of them stepped forward slowly, but another gently grabbed their arm, pulling them back. They didn't know if they should go to her or give her space. They had never seen their mother like this. Not during arguments, not during filming, not even during heartbreak. This was different. This was a woman whose emotional foundation had completely collapsed. Kody crouched down in front of her, trying to meet her eye level. "Robyn, you're scaring the kids," he said softly, but even he could hear the tremor in his own voice. She finally looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in a long time, there was no anger, no defensiveness, no walls, just raw, naked pain. I'm scaring them. She whispered. Do you know what scares me, Kody? That I'm the villain in everyone's story. That no matter what I do, I'm the one who ruined everything. Her voice rose, shaking more with each word. They blame me. The fans, the world. Your other wives, even you sometimes. Don't deny it. I see it in your eyes when you talk about the family falling apart. I hear it in how you say their names versus mine. I read it in every comment. I feel it every time you walk out of a room and leave me alone with the silence. The kids shifted uncomfortably in the doorway. Some of them stared at the floor, tears already forming. Others stared at their mother as if they were seeing a stranger. On the TV screen, frozen mid-frame was an old confessional shot of Robyn.com, put together explaining something about family unity and sacrifice. The contrast between that image and the woman in front of them now was almost unbearable. I tried, she continued, her voice breaking. I tried so hard to be what everyone needed me to be. The peacemaker, the understanding wife, the one who stayed, the one who took all the hits so you didn't have to. But I can't carry it anymore. Kody, I can't carry you and them and the audience and the crew and the judgment and the guilt. It's crushing me. She pressed the heels of her hands into her eyes like she was trying to push the tears back inside. But they just kept spilling out. One of the camera crew, standing just behind the family, lowered his equipment. Whatever this was, it didn't feel like a scene for television anymore. It felt like something they shouldn't even be witnessing. Kody, whispered one of the daughters behind him, her hand shaking as it clutched the doorframe. Do something. He swallowed hard. The truth was, he didn't know what to do. This wasn't like breaking up an argument between the wives. This wasn't like negotiating holiday schedules or house moves. This was deeper, darker, and for the first time in his life, Kody Brown, the head of the family, the decision maker, the patriarch, felt completely powerless. He reached out slowly, placing one hand gently on Robyn's shoulder. You're not alone, he said, but the words sounded weak even to him. She let out another broken laugh, bitter and hollow. Aren't I? She whispered. Where were you when I cried in the bathroom and pretended I was fine for the cameras? Where were you when I read thousands of comments calling me a homewrecker? Where were you when I begged you to fix things before the other wives walked away? You were busy losing them, and I was busy losing myself. Silence filled the room again. Her words didn't just land, they cut. One by one, the kids slowly entered the room now, some sitting on the bed, others on the floor. One daughter scooted next to Robyn and curled an arm around her tightly, resting her head against her mother's shoulder. Mom, please, we're here, she whispered. We don't care what people say. You're our mom. Those words broke something else open. Robyn's shoulders began to shake harder, fresh sobs pouring out as she buried her face in her daughter's hair. I don't deserve you, she choked out. I don't deserve any of you. I should have done better. I should have protected you all from this mess. Instead, I made it worse. No, you didn't, another child replied quietly, though even they sounded like they were trying to convince themselves as well. This isn't all your fault. But Robyn wasn't listening anymore, because in her head, a different voice was louder, the one that repeated every insult she'd read, every accusation she'd heard, every conspiracy theory threaded together online. You're the reason Christine left. You took Kody from the others. You ruined the family. Everything is your fault. The words had become shackles around her mind. From the doorway, a producer finally spoke up, his tone cautious. Kody, do you want us to step out? He asked. We can stop rolling. Kody looked up, his expression torn. Part of him knew this moment was too raw, too ugly, too personal to be filmed. Another part of him, the part that had lived in front of cameras for over a decade, knew that this was the truth behind the show, the reality behind the reality TV. Turn them off, he finally whispered. The red recording lights on the cameras blinked out one by one. But even with the equipment powered down, one thing remained clear. The damage had already been done. This wasn't about a single night or a single breakdown. This was the result of years of emotional neglect, unresolved tension, public pressure, and a collapsing spiritual structure that was once called a family. The kids watched as their parents sat in silence. Robyn, shaking from the weight of everything she had confessed, Kody staring at the floor, his jaw tight, his mind racing. He had always believed he could manage the chaos around him, that he could spin, justify, and control the narrative. But this was out of his hands. One of the older daughters finally broke the silence. "Dad," she said carefully, "we can't pretend this is normal anymore." The words floated in the air, heavy and undeniable. This isn't just Mom having a bad day. This is something else. She's not okay. None of us are. Kody nodded slowly, his throat tight. "I know," he said. "I see that now." But the truth was, he hadn't seen it. Not really. He had seen anger, distance, and conflict with his other wives. He'd seen frustration and tears. But with Robyn, he was so used to her being the strong one, the one who took on his burden, that he'd never truly noticed how much it was destroying her. He had leaned on her, until she collapsed under the weight. Robyn finally wiped her face with the back of her hand, her voice barely audible. "I don't want to be the villain anymore, Kody," she whispered. "I don't want to wake up every day and wonder if the world would be happier if I just disappeared. I don't want my kids to grow up reading things about their mother that make them ashamed of me." The kids' eyes widened in alarm at that word, disappeared. One of them quickly grabbed her hand, squeezing it tightly. "Don't say that," they begged. "Please don't ever say that again." Robyn looked at them, guilt spreading across her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered quickly. "I'm so sorry. I'm tired of being hated for breathing. I'm tired of existing in a world where I'm always the problem." Kody leaned closer. "You're not the problem," he said firmly. It was the first thing he'd said that carried real conviction. "We are a mess. The whole family is a mess. The decisions I made, the way I handled everything, it's not just on you. It was never just you." She stared at him, searching for something in his face. Sincerity, regret, truth. "Then say it where they can hear it," she whispered, glancing briefly toward the hallway, toward where the cameras used to be. "Say it in the confessional. Say it in the episodes. Say it to the world that thinks you're the victim and I'm the monster." The words hit him like a slap, because deep down, he knew she was right. He had cried on camera. He had talked about betrayal, disloyalty, wives who gave up on him. He had shown his pain over and over again, but he hadn't shown hers. Not really, and certainly not like this. That night, the family stayed together in that room longer than they had stayed together anywhere in months. Some kids fell asleep sitting up against the wall. Others lay curled at the foot of the bed. Robyn eventually moved from the floor to the mattress, still wrapped in a blanket. Her eyes swollen but quieter now, breaths slower, anchored by the physical presence of the children who refused to leave her side. Kody sat in a chair near the bed, elbows on his knees, staring blankly at the carpet. There were no producers guiding their words now. No crew adjusting lights. No confessional chair waiting. Just a broken family sitting in the middle of the emotional wreckage they had all helped create. And yet, in the middle of all that darkness, one undeniable truth emerged. This wasn't just Robyn's breakdown. This was a mirror held up to every single one of them. To Kody, who had let parts of his family fall apart while chasing control. To the wives who left carrying their own wounds and resentments. To the children who watched their entire family structure crumble in front of millions of viewers. To the network who turned their lives into entertainment. To the audience who picked sides like it was a sport. Robyn had simply been the one who cracked first under the pressure. And as that long, heavy night dragged into the early hours of the morning, one thing became clear. Life after this moment would never look the same again. Not for Robyn, not for Kody, not for the Brown family, because they had finally seen just how deep the damage went. And there are some truths that you can't ever edit out. Truths that you can't ever edit out. When the sun finally began to rise over Flagstaff, the Brown household looked nothing like the glamorous, carefully framed family seen on television. The house was quiet, too quiet. Not peaceful, just exhausted. Like every wall had been listening the entire night. absorbing every painful confession, every trembled breath, every broken sentence uttered in that dim bedroom. Robyn had fallen asleep just before dawn, her face still streaked with dried tears. Her body curled defensively like she was protecting herself from something unseen. Her children slept scattered around hers, some on the bed, some on the floor, some leaning against one another in corners. Nobody had wanted to leave her alone, not even for a moment. And Kody, he hadn't slept at all. He sat in the same chair the entire night, staring at the silent TV screen that still showed a paused image of their old life. He replayed Robyn's words again and again in his mind, each one hitting him harder, sharper, cutting through the layers of denial he'd built over the years. Where were you when I cried in the bathroom? You left me with the silence. I don't want to exist in a world where I'm always the problem. He had heard pain before. He had seen tears before, but never like this. This wasn't just a breakdown. This was a woman who had carried everyone's blame until her spirit cracked under the weight. As morning lights seeped into the room through the still closed blinds, one of the camera crew knocked gently on the doorframe. He didn't come in, he didn't dare, but he had a message. Kody TLC wants to know what happened last night. Kody looked up slowly, his face tired, older, defeated. Tell them nothing, he said quietly. Tell them the cameras were off. But they heard some of it from downstairs, the crew member whispered. Producers are asking if we caught any audio. Kody clenched his jaw. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about ratings, or storylines, or narratives. For the first time, he cared about protecting someone other than himself. Delete it, he said. All of it. Don't let that footage exist. The crew member hesitated. Kody, you know they won't delete, then hide it, he interrupted. Lose it. Do whatever the hell you have to. No one sees that, because deep down, even Kody Brown, the man who had willingly watched his family's destruction unfold on national television, that Robyn's collapse wasn't entertainment. This was real. This was raw. This was dangerous. And TLC. They knew exactly how powerful that footage was. TLC's panicked by noon. The producers were already in a video meeting about it. One producer shook his head. We can't air any of it. If we show her in that state, we'll be accused of exploiting mental instability. Another producer disagreed. This is the most real moment the show has had in 5 seasons. Fans will explode. A third producer, the most senior, leaned back and sighed heavily. That's exactly why we can't show it, he said. The fans who hate Robyn will weaponize it. And the fans who defend her will say we pushed her to this point. They argued for hours. Should they show parts of it? Blur it. Narrate it. Recreate it. Cover it with a voiceover. Ultimately, they did something unexpected. They filed the footage under a restricted category. Emotional trauma not for broadcast. The only time footage gets that label is when cast members have medical emergencies, psychological crises, or emotional events that could cause legal backlash. They knew airing it would cross a line. Even for reality TV, the family reacts. Meanwhile, inside the house, the atmosphere had shifted. For the first time in years, the Brown children moved quietly, carefully. Like they were living in a fragile glass world that might shatter if they spoke too loudly. Some made breakfast quietly, leaving food outside Robyn's bedroom door in case she woke up hungry. Others kept checking on each other with worried glances. Nobody wanted to talk about what they saw the night before. Nobody wanted to say the words out loud. Nobody wanted to admit how scared they had been. When Robyn finally opened her eyes, she blinked slowly, disoriented. Her body felt heavy, her chest tight, her throat raw from crying. Her daughter sat beside her, watching for the moment she woke up. "Mom?" she whispered. "Do you want some water?" Robyn stared at her for a moment before giving a small, weak nod. When she spoke, her voice was barely there. "Did I scare you?" she asked softly. Her daughter swallowed hard. "Yes," she admitted honestly. "But you didn't mean to. We love you, Mom." Robyn closed her eyes again as tears slipped silently down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." But the truth was, she didn't need to apologize. Not anymore, because everyone in that house had finally realized Robyn wasn't the villain they imagined. She was the one who had absorbed the most pressure. The one who stayed. The one who tried. The one who carried the blame until it crushed her. Kody's guilt by afternoon. Kody finally went outside to get some air. For years, he had been angry at the wives who left. Angry at the situation, angry at the narrative. But today, something else filled him. Guilt. Heavy, suffocating guilt. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through texts from Christine, Janelle, and Mary, messages he had ignored. Arguments he had escalated. Warnings he dismissed. He replayed moments when he blamed them for breaking the family, not realizing the pressure it put on the one wife who stayed. Suddenly, he felt something he rarely showed shame. Not the public kind. The real, personal kind. TLC writers begin rewriting the season later that evening. TLC's writing team gathered to edit the storyline. But something strange happened. They realized they didn't have a storyline, because last night changed everything. No script could match what happened. No producer could spin it. No editor could reshape it. Robyn's breakdown wasn't a plot twist. It was a warning. A line drawn in the sand. They had two choices: exploit it for views or cover it up to protect the cast for the first time in many years. They chose option number 2, because if the world saw the real footage, the internet would erupt. The fan base would be divided beyond repair, and the Brown children would grow up seeing their mother's darkest night turned into memes. Even TLC wasn't ready for that. The internet reacts without knowing the truth. Meanwhile, fans online sensed that something had happened. Reddit threads began popping up. Why is Robyn missing from filming this week? Why did Kody cancel his last interview? The crew seems tense. What's going on? YouTube channels started posting theories. Blogs began speculating. Fans began tearing each other apart in comments, arguing about Robyn's role in the family. But nobody knew the real reason. Nobody knew how close things had come to spiraling into something unfixable. Nobody knew that on that silent night, a family almost lost one of its pillars. Not physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And sometimes that kind of loss is even harder to recover from. The aftermath inside the home for the next several days. Robyn barely spoke. The kids hovered protectively. Kody actually tried to be supportive. TLC postponed filming. Everyone in the house walked quietly, as if noise itself might trigger another collapse. Slowly, Robyn began to come back to herself. Not fully, not completely, but enough to open the blinds, enough to sit on the couch, enough to breathe without breaking. But something inside her had changed forever. The world saw her as a symbol. Fans saw her as a character. Haters saw her as a target. But her family finally saw her as a person, a human being carrying too much pain for too long. The truth TLC tried to hide, the truth is simple. The Brown family's collapse did not break Robyn. The world's reaction to their collapse did. TLC never aired the footage. They never even mentioned the night. They edited around it, skipped the timeline, and gave viewers only a fragment of the truth. But the people inside that house, those who sat with her during her darkest hours, will never forget. Because they saw the moment the strongest woman in the Brown family finally shattered. And once someone breaks like that, they're never the same again. Not Robyn, not Kody, not the children, not the story, and definitely not the family, not the story, and definitely not the family.